I'm Ann Robinson, mother of Carl Robinson, who's now 40 years old. And this evening is the story of his life. He was born in 1977, and we were very surprised to find out he had cystic fibrosis. We didn't know what cystic fibrosis was when he was born, and he wasn't actually diagnosed till he was 5 weeks old. He was born at Stanford Children's Hospital. The first thing the OBGYN said was, "I don't like the looks of his stomach." He was born with meconium ileus. And as you see in the slide, he was in the hospital. He had surgery when he was 10 hours old, and he was in the hospital for 21 days. We had an experience with him that was shocking to us because we had an older daughter who was just fine. We had no known cystic fibrosis in our families, but Rob and I both have English backgrounds, and we have found out we have the same CF gene. So Carl is a double delta F508. When he was born, we suddenly realized that I changed careers. I decided that I had an art business going, and I taught art in schools for 10 years. And because of my teaching, I think it was very valuable to raise a child with cystic fibrosis. It was very helpful to see how his energy levels changed and how he was sick or not sick. In this picture was taken in the hospital. He was born at 6 pounds, 5 ounces, and he was actually smaller than my daughter, who was born at 8 pounds, 1 ounce. He was 3 weeks early, and she was 10 days early, so we didn't think anything about that being early. As you can see, Carl had lots of energy. Most of his issues the first few years were digestive issues. His lungs were kept clear, and we mostly had to figure out what to feed him because he couldn't digest most foods. The dietitians put him on a low-fat diet, a high-fat diet at first, because this is what most CF children had, but he could not digest the fat. So he was very thin. He grew up to be very active and very physically coordinated. His activity level was quite high, and when he was 18 months old, he got on the roof of our house. Unknown to anyone, a woman stopped and rang my doorbell, and she said, "Lady, there's a baby on your roof." And it was Carl. We'd had a plumbing inspection that morning, and the plumbers and Rob had left the ladders up in the front yard, so they were out. Unknown to me, the back gate was unlocked, and Carl went around, climbed the ladder, got on the roof. But he was very coordinated, so I went out in front and looked at him and thought, well, what do? I can't go up and get him and get down on a ladder. That's impossible. So I went and got a bottle and his favorite stuffed animal, and I said, if you want these, you have to come down and get them, and he did. So he is very coordinated from the very beginning. He was into everything. He didn't walk at 9 months, he ran. And so this is the story of Carl. His physical coordination has been in process. I just cannot believe the things he got into. When he was 5, he told me, "Mom, look at me, I can get on the roof in 7 seconds." And he got on the roof by climbing a wood pile, climbing on the fence, walking into the fence to the roof of the house and got on top. He was very proud of this. So I asked his older daughter, "Did you ever want to get on the roof?" And she said, "No. Why would I want to get on the roof?" So I raised one very practical child and one who was not practical. His physical activity really paid off on his cystic fibrosis because he was physically very adept. He played soccer at 5, t-ball at 5, and at 6 he went on to baseball. He loved baseball. He played basketball. Whenever the season would change, he would change his sport. And he was very active his whole life, and I didn't have to encourage activity at all in him at all. He did very well until he was 11. When he was 11, he took a long bike ride with his father on backroads bicycle trip to Arizona. And on this trip, he lost 7 pounds. And he was skin and bones at this point, and I was very concerned. So we went to one doctor and we asked for a nutritional blood study, and we didn't get it. So I went to another doctor and got a nutritional blood study, and we found out what was wrong. He was not digesting any fat at all. And so we switched him to a low-fat diet, and to make it easy, the whole family went on a low-fat diet at that time. When Carl was born at Children's Hospital, that's the only place he's ever been is Children's Hospital. He was on CCS for a few years, and then we didn't meet the income requirement, so at that time he went on GHPP, and he's been on GHPP ever since. He dropped GHPP 2 years ago because he got a very good job in San Francisco. He makes a six-figure salary, and he works 50, 60. I've even known him to work 70 hours a week, which I think is too much for him, but as long as he can do it. The company provides his Ocampo every month and as a part of his insurance, and he's doing very well on that drug. So we are very happy now at his life. But through his life, we had lots of experiences that were difficult to deal with. At one time when he lived alone in an apartment in Palo Alto, he called us at 10 o'clock to tell us that he'd eaten dinner, he'd taken his insulin, and he threw up his dinner. So we made a trip to the hospital, emergency room, in an ambulance that night because we had to get glucose into his body quickly, and we solved that problem at that time. He's also had some blockages and had to go to the hospital to fix the blockages. I think he's learned how to eat his food and take his medicine. He's done really well. And I think the fact he is working harder now with his diabetes is harder for him to work. We did everything we could to help him organize because he has dyslexia. When he was 8 years old, he was having temper tantrums about going to school. He did not like school. At that time, he went to a Loney school in Palo Alto. We had him in a special day class there. We decided, after working with him, and his favorite subject was recess, and he would freely admit that. He loved to play games, and he liked to play on the playground. That was his fun for the day. He has a learning disability, I think, that caused by his surgery at 10 hours old, and his body was very much traumatized at that time. So when he was 8 years old, he told me he had to have two things wrong with him. He had to have dyslexia as well as cystic fibrosis, and that was just too much for him. Before he went on trips, he had to have a spreadsheet to go out of town. He had a spreadsheet of all his drugs. And as a child, I taught him what he takes, when he takes it, and why he takes it. He used this experience when he moved to Stanford. When he first went to Stanford from Children's Hospital, they had little information about how to take care of CF patients. He called me at the office one day and said, "Mom, you need to come down here and tell them what to do." And I said, "You know what to do. You have to tell them." So he did. And I went down there that night, and the nurses wanted an in-service for me. And I said, "I can't do an in-service. I have 2 degrees in art. I mean, that's not a very good thing." So I told them that they had to get information from the nurses at Children's Hospital on how to take care of CF patients. So he did fine in the hospital because he could tell the nurses what he knew. When they didn't know, he would do that. So that was very helpful for him to know. But the spreadsheet was really helpful, and he still runs out of drugs occasionally. And to get his special Ocampo, he has to go through a CVS special pharmacy. So when he runs out, he has to order. They give him a 90-day supply, and he has to be home to pick up the order because it's worth so much money, I guess. But that's it. And I told him when he was 21, it was time for him to take over his own work, his own jobs. I had to make my children responsible for different things in the house. For instance, when I started working here, all the children did their own laundry, including Rob. Claire came home from school in the 5th grade and said, "Mom, I'm the only I'm the only child in the class that has to do their own laundry." And I said, "Well, that makes you ahead of the rest." Claire's gone on to get a PhD, but I realized that she had to get organized, and I also made Claire cook one night a week because that really made it easier for me. Carl learned to cook too because he'd call me at the office at 3 o'clock and say, "I'm hungry, what can I eat?" And he would eat sometimes a whole barbecue chicken at one time. And I would tell him, "This was not healthy. Try some fiber too." But I really think that they've taken care of themselves because they had to learn that, and I think it's good for children to know that. And teaching school helped me have children. I was grateful that I taught for 10 years before I had children. I knew how to make them responsible and how them to take charge of their lives. When he was 8 years old, we decided he was very upset about all of his things happening to his body, and he was refusing to go to school, and he didn't want to do any of his treatments. So we sent him to a psychologist, and it was very helpful. He was in therapy age 9, 10, and 11. He went in therapy a very angry child, very upset with everything that was wrong with him. He did not accept his CF at all. He went into therapy for 3 years, and he came out a whole totally different person. And we've had counselors from the junior high call me and say, "I read a description of how he was when he came over here, and we can't believe he's the same person." And not only that, his IQ test went up 30 points. I mean, it's kind of like he was depressed about where he was at 8 years old, and he was very unhappy. But he came out a happy person. He could tell us that he loved us, and he also appreciated the care we took of him. Now, he did go to CF camps as long as they had them, and after that he went to Y camps, and he enjoyed Y camps. He did Y Small World with his dad, and he liked being with other people, but most of all he loved the sports he was in. He loved baseball. He was in Little League. He was a pitcher. He could hit home runs. He was very active and large for his age because we kept him back a year in school. We kept him back in kindergarten an extra year. And so that's the development he came through. He came out a very happy person. He started working. After going to school, he had to work hard to keep up with his grades at Gunn High School. And he started working when he was in high school, being a tech aide in the Stanford Industrial Park. The counselors told him there is a job you might like on the job board. So he started working after school, and he did a lot of IT work at that time. And that's basically where he learned his IT work. When he was 16, we bought him an XT. The first thing he did was take it all apart and put it back together. So this is his love of his life, is IT support, and he's still doing it. Now he was about 20. He went to De Anza for 2 years and was offered a good job and quit school at 2 years. And I've often regretted that, but he's done well. He began being very social and dating people and telling people he has CF. He met his current wife online, and it's very interesting. He told her he had CF on the first date. He thought that was something she should know, and they've done very well together. He bought a house in Redwood City in 2009 because we told him he was wasting his money on playthings. Fancy cars, fancy aquariums, fish tanks, and all of this. So here he is coming up with his Kara. He met Kara when he was, he met her at probably 33, married her at 38, and they had a baby girl last June 30th. And here's his wedding pictures coming up here. He was married at Asilomar, on the beach at Asilomar. Here he is with his baby. She's very healthy. She's a CF carrier, and they had a baby using in vitro fertilization at Stanford Hospital. And she's very cute. This is a picture we took in December at Christmas. We took Christmas pictures. And we babysit for Everly 2 to 3 days a week. And she is a lot of fun and a lot of work. You don't realize it when you're a grandparent how much work it is because you had your children 40 years ago when you could handle it better. Anyway, Carl is very successful. He has a full-time job at On24. It's an online search company. They also stream online. He supervises people in Singapore, New York, and London, and North Carolina. And he travels a bit on business, but it's usually to take care of employee problems there and do training when he goes there. So he's on our combi now. He's doing wonderful. He had no trouble starting our combi at all. He was healthy enough, I think, that when he started it 2 years ago, that it was very easy for him to do, and he naturally has done very well on it. He's had colds, and I told him you're going to catch colds from your daughter anyway. Occasionally, we've had him on GHPP occasionally, but when he got this job, his salary was high enough that the GHPP was outlandish, and we decided not to do it this year because this job is good. It had a good insurance, and he only went to the hospital once when he ran out of Ocampo for 2 months. His company changed insurance carriers, and this made space in his Ocampo. It made a space. He didn't have it for 2 months. And so he got pneumonia, went to the hospital. He only stayed 5 days. He was able to go home. They were afraid to keep him in the hospital because everybody had the flu. So they put him on a PICC line and IV, and he could still go to work. So that's what he did. It's been interesting, and we feel blessed to have a 40-year-old son with cystic fibrosis and a granddaughter, and they are planning to have another granddaughter maybe in 2 years. So their life is set.